Hello and welcome back to the all-new Girl Grown channel where we give you guys tips and tricks based on real-life stories and experiences and backed up by expert advice to help level you up and help you blossom and grow into the person you were born to be. I'm Georgia Rose and today we're going to be talking about the 3 times that I moved abroad completely alone. The first time was in my early 20s when I somehow found myself living in New York City, studying international business and working for an iconic fashion advertising agency. The second time I was a little bit older and I made my way to Bali where I became an author slash hippie slash party girl hybrid. And the third time was when I lived in Australia and I started my own business there. Travel's been a huge passion of mine for a really long time. It's when I'm exploring a new terrain, new architecture, new culture, new food, meeting new people that I feel my most alive, invigorated, and fulfilled. I didn't grow up traveling that much at all. So my first big trip was when I was 18 and I traveled the east coast of Australia with my best friend for 5 weeks. And in the build-up to that trip, or not just the build-up, for many, many years prior to that trip, I'd really been struggling a lot with mental health. And going on that trip and experiencing the thrill of freeing yourself from everything that's familiar and drastically changing your surroundings and leaping into the unknown really showed me the therapeutic, cathartic effects that travel can have on your soul. That trip down under really set the blueprint for a life spent on the road. I've been fortunate enough to travel to almost every corner of the globe and have those 3 wonderful experiences living on different continents. So without further ado, I'm going to tell you guys my story moving abroad 3 different times. The first time I moved abroad, as I mentioned earlier, I moved to New York City from my hometown of London. I studied international business and I worked for an iconic fashion advertising agency. And what I mean by iconic is some of the most celebrated, recognizable fashion ads of all time came out of this agency. The most respected photographers, stylists, art directors, models, celebrities, just in and out of that revolving door all day long. And as someone who had not been in that world before, it was shocking, it was inspiring. It seemed at the time, as someone in their early 20s, like the coolest thing in the world. But of course that industry has a very ugly side as well, and that's something I'm going to be getting into in later videos. My life in New York really was a mixture of unfathomable glamour. Somehow I found myself friends with one of New York's cool crowds, and that combined with my job meant that I had access to these super exclusive parties and fashion shows, and I had friends who went to the Oscars and had solo exhibits at the most respected art galleries around the world. So on one side there was all this, slightly superficial, dare I say it, but glamorous side to my life. But on the flip side, I was also dealing with trying to survive in a city as brutal as New York can be. And I would come home to my cockroach-infested apartment in Chinatown, sometimes at 11 p.m, where I'd worked another 14-hour day, not had lunch, been treated like crap by my tyrant of a boss, open the fridge and there would be nothing in it but cockroaches. And guys, let me just say, anyone who lives in New York knows that it doesn't matter how clean or dirty or whatever your apartment is. If you have cockroaches in your building, there's nothing you can do about it. They're coming in, you keep getting rid of them, but they keep coming back. It's wild. Anyway, so I would open my fridge and at times there would be nothing in it because I was living on a pittance and I couldn't always afford to eat. So it was a really strange time, to be on one hand rubbing shoulders with all these celebrities and models and creative people, but then also behind the scenes be really struggling. And it wasn't just financially struggling. New York is an incredibly intense, edgy, raw, dark, but amazing place to live. And I've always said that it's somewhere that either you ride on top of the wave of energy that's in the city, or it consumes and eats your energy and drains every drop out of you. And for the first year and a half, I would say I was one of those people riding on the energy. But for those certainly the last 6 months, I felt like New York was a vampire on my neck, draining every bit of life out of me. And yes, that sounds very dramatic. I can't help it. I'm a writer. But it also was how I felt. And New York also taught me that actually I'm someone who really values my quiet time, loves nature, needs to be away from people sometimes. And clearly New York is not the place to live if you have that kind of character and personality. So it was a wonderful experience, but I knew I had to get out of New York to preserve my sanity. So I did. After New York, I moved back to London for a few years. I founded a business which ultimately failed. And failure is something that I'm going to be talking to you guys about more, because I think failure is something that you should never be ashamed of. If you failed, then that means that you tried for something. And it's failure that is our greatest teacher. If you're just winning and succeeding, you're not learning. You really do learn from failure. And I know I learned a lot from that experience. So don't ever be ashamed of failing. So then I started working for a luxury heritage brand, and I was on the global marketing and PR team. I did that for a few years. It was really good. They were really kind to me. But as I approached my 30th birthday, I started to get this feeling that something wasn't right. I think there's something about turning 30 that kind of brings everything into sharp focus, where perhaps you can let years slip by in your 20s because you feel like you're always going to be super young and you've got so much time on your side that you don't have to kind of take anything too seriously. But approaching your 30th, and again, and I know I say this a lot, turning 30 is something that I'm going to be talking about as well in later videos. It's quite a pivotal moment in many of our lives, and it certainly was for me. And I really just had to ask myself, is this it? Is this what I want for my life? And don't get me wrong, I knew I had a great job. I had a roof over my head. I had so many things in my life to be so thankful for, and I truly, truly was. Still, I had this overwhelming, icky feeling that I was not following my heart, I wasn't following my passions, I wasn't making use of the talents that I had. I was in a position where I was single, I didn't have any kids, I didn't have too many responsibilities at the time. So I had the luxury, I was fortunate enough to be able to try to do something about my situation. And so I did. I saved really, really hard because I'm a big believer in responsibly following your dreams. And that's something I talk about in my last video, how to follow your dreams. You have to have a strategy in place. I don't believe that you should just get so excited and so inspired and jump into something new without weighing the risks and ensuring you're properly prepared. So I saved like a maniac, and when I felt it was safe to do so, I quit my job. All I knew was that I was going to make a big change. I was going to leave the UK, and I believed it was going to work out for me. And I'll tell you why. I've always found in my life that when you follow your intuition and you follow your heart, doors open and things start happening for you. I'm not trying to get all woo-woo on you or anything like that. I'm sharing my personal experiences. When I've been out of alignment with my soul purpose and with my intuition, I've hit a lot of blocks, things haven't gone well, and it's ultimately failed. The times that I have really stepped into and owned my desires and followed my intuition, I swear to you, things have just so naturally fallen into place. It's almost been a joke, like you couldn't have written it better. So that's just how things have gone for me. I guess I've been lucky. So I ended up moving to Bali. I'd visited a few years before with my sister and really fallen in love with the culture, with the people, the landscapes, the freedom that I'd felt there. So Bali seemed like the perfect place to go. I found a beautiful homestay to live in Bali's cultural capital, which is Ubud, and I moved in with a lady who became my Balinese mama, as I call her, Wayan, she's called. And I lived in a beautiful apartment on her property, which overlooked endless rice paddies and jungle, and a volcano loomed in the distance. It was unbelievably magical, and it was inspiring. And it was in Bali that I felt inspired to start writing my book, which is about my life. And I know that that is so cringe. I cringe when I say it, but I had the same motivation with my book that I have with my YouTube channel, which is that I recognize that I have lived several lifetimes in one. I've worn so many different hats. I've been so many different people, metaphorically, and I've learned so much. And I don't want that to go to waste. It's really thrilling for me and exciting to be able to share what I've learned with you guys. Anyway, so I started writing my book, my life story, cringe, and I was writing for seven to 8 hours a day. I also approached some local businesses and started doing some marketing for them. So I was earning a pittance, but I was so fulfilled and so happy. And this was a huge revelation to me. I didn't necessarily need to be earning a lot of money to have a job with a fancy title or have all these material possessions or be going out to fancy restaurants all the time. For a period of time in Bali, I did end up moving in with an American TV star who was an absolute party animal and having the most wild few months. At the time, I was also dabbling with some pretty intense hippie, new age, shamanic stuff as well. So on one hand, I was getting into all of that, and on the other hand, I was getting into this crazy, wild party girl lifestyle, but still writing my book and still accumulating freelance clients at the same time. I eventually left Bali because I felt that I was not ready to give up on the ambitious side of myself, but I also wanted to have a wonderful life outside of work. And I couldn't think of anywhere better to do that than the absolutely beautiful Australia, which is a country that is so close to my heart. I love it so much. So a decade or more after I had that pivotal, life-changing first trip to Australia, I found myself there once again as I moved there on my own. So I moved to a place called Byron Bay, which, for those of you who don't know, is pretty much heaven on earth. Of all the places I've seen in the world, Byron Bay truly is one of the most spectacular and special places that I've ever seen and had the absolute pleasure of living in. When I first moved to Byron, I started working for somebody else once again, and I thought that that was going to be a really amazing gig. So it was doing something that was meaningful in my eyes, and it was also a 6-figure salary job, had a great title. I don't want to contradict what I said before. It's not that I was buying into all that stuff again, but I'm not going to lie, having a nice salary in particular, more I don't care about titles, but having a nice salary is of course a nice thing. I also moved in with a psychic tarot reading astrologer who ended up being one of my soul sisters, someone I love so dearly to this day. She's wonderful, and living the most incredible life outside of work. It was everything that I've dreamed of. I spent my days swimming in the clearest, most beautiful water you can imagine. I bought a motorbike and I was bombing around on my motorbike, which I loved. I learned to surf. I would go exploring waterfalls and jungles at every opportunity I got. It was really, really amazing. There is a but, I'm sure you'll be glad to know, which is that my boss turned out to be a narcissistic psychopath. And I don't use those words lightly. The guy spent his entire existence berating and bullying his staff. It was really shocking. So I worked there for a while, eventually quit, and decided that it was time to go freelance again, start my own thing again, but this time pour my heart and soul into it, take it really, really seriously. So I got 2 other amazing girls to work with me. One is a web developer, one's a graphic designer, and I basically started going out and literally knocking on doors, offering our services to clients. And basically what we were offering was we were redoing people's websites, rewriting their brand stories, rewriting their product descriptions, digital marketing. It was pretty cool. Started to get clients, started to get recommendations. So someone would work with us and then recommend us to someone else, and it would kind of go on like that. And I did some work that I'm really proud of still to this day. And I have to tell you that every cent that I earned, or that we earned, meant so much to me. It was so exciting and so fulfilling to actually be making my own money, rather than just kind of getting a paycheck at the end of every month like I did in London or New York or when I was first in Australia. It was really, really great. So I had to leave Australia when my visa ran out, which was very, very sad. It still holds such a special place in my heart, and honestly, if I could move to Australia tomorrow, I would do it in a heartbeat. It's such an amazing place, in my books anyway. Living there really taught me that it is possible to have a healthy balance between work and play, and also to feel fulfilled by the job that you do. So it was a really wonderful experience, and really taught me a lot. There's so much more that I want to talk to you guys about when it comes to what moving abroad or traveling can do to your mind, your body, your heart, your soul. It's such an expanding, rewarding, exciting experience. At least for me, I understand that it's not for everyone. And there's so much that I learned that I just can't wait to share with you guys. For now, I'm going to draw a line under it today. I think I've been talking for quite long enough. If you found this video interesting, please do let me know in the comments and maybe give me a like. You can also give me a subscribe here on YouTube, and you can head over to my Instagram page and follow me at girl.grown to keep up to date with what I'm doing. My next video will be with you within a week, so please stay tuned for that, and I will see you guys very soon. Thank you for watching.